Hi, everyone. I'm Colleen Robledo Green, here with another genealogy quick tip. Today's quick tip focuses on the contemporary dual surname system in place throughout Spain, Mexico, and the rest of Latin America. Understanding naming conventions is critical for finding records as well as confirming identity and kinship. So let's get started exploring the dual surname system.
The first point I want to make is that while the practice of using multiple surnames has existed for centuries among some regions and social classes in Spain and what became Latin America and eventually the United States, the dual surname system as we now know it is a relatively recent custom. Dr. George Reiskamp's works explain that the contemporary dual surname custom became standardized and formalized in Spain and Latin America with the introduction of the civil registration system in each country around the mid-19th century, often written into federal law. Yes, we do sometimes see two-part surnames in records that predate civil registration, including during the Spanish colonial era. However, Dr. Reiskamp explains that these were compound surnames, not dual surnames as we now know them. Prior to civil registration, people could use any surname or surnames they wanted, and in any order. The second point I want to make pertains to the rich genealogical value of this new dual surname system. Dr. Reiskamp emphasizes that each of these dual surnames serves as a miniature genealogical tree, providing key information and clues to help us identify previous generations. We'll explore this visually in a minute. The new dual surname standard consists of a surname inherited from each parent, with the father's paternal surname appearing first, followed by the mother's paternal surname. Let's elaborate on this dual surname in the context of Mexico, because my family history research and so much of my teaching focuses on Mexico. Mexico obtained independence from Spain in 1821. However, Mexico did not introduce civil registration until almost 40 years after independence. Mexico did not begin strictly enforcing civil registration until 1867. This new dual surname system became written into federal law. And while you will see in a minute why we genealogists should be so excited about the implications of this new dual surname convention on our genealogical research, unfortunately, future generations of genealogists will struggle more with their research because just recently in 2020, Mexico's government changed its federal civil code, allowing more flexibility for the parents to choose which family surnames to pass on to their child and in which order. To help explain this dual surname standard visually, I want to introduce you to my great-grandparents, Jose and Maria. They were both born in the 1870s and 1880s and then married in a small rural rancho in the state of San Luis Potosí, Mexico. They immigrated to the U.S. in 1915 during the Mexican Revolution. Both Jose and Maria were born after civil registration was in place in Mexico, after the dual surname standard was in place. We can see their dual surnames here. Pay attention to my use of color. My great-grandfather Jose's dual surname consisted first of his paternal surname, Robledo, shown here in blue. By paternal surname, this means Jose inherited the Robledo surname from his father. Robledo was his father's paternal surname, meaning his father's paternal surname. Jose's maternal surname, the second part of his dual surname, was Sanchez, shown here in green, which was inherited from Jose's mother. Sanchez was Jose's mother's paternal surname, inherited from her father and from her father's father. My great-grandmother Maria's paternal surname was Nieto, shown here in pink, which she inherited from her father. Nieto was Maria's father's paternal surname, coming from his father. It was his father's father's paternal surname. Maria's maternal surname was Compean, which she inherited from her mother. Compean was Maria's mother's paternal surname, meaning Maria's mother inherited from her father. It was his paternal surname. This is their oldest child, my great-aunt Guadalupe. Great-aunt Lupe was born in Mexico in 1910. When Guadalupe's birth was registered, her legal name under this dual surname system would have consisted of her father's paternal surname, followed by her mother's paternal surname, Maria Guadalupe Robledo Nieto. Now, my grandfather is one of Lupe's younger brothers. He was the first child born in the United States. So the dual surname never applied to my grandfather. He only ever went by the surname Robledo. But the older children who had been born in Mexico used the dual surname, or at least the dual surname was their legal name of record at the time. And in the 20th century, we at times start to see the dual surname written out in this manner, with the conjunction Y, in Spanish pronounced E, which means and, between both surnames, Maria Guadalupe Robledo y Nieto. So always watch for all of those examples. And I made the point their legal name of record, because this is the legal name of record. It may not have been the name they always used or said. Let's now look at where and how the dual surname can show up in the records. This is the top part of the 1891 Mexican civil death registration for my third great-grandfather, Pedro Nieto Castillo. We can see his name highlighted here in the blue rectangular frame. Pedro was the paternal grandfather of my great-grandmother Maria Nieto Compean, whom you just met. Pedro was born in either 1827 or 1829. Civil registration and the dual surname standard were not in place by his birth, but records from later in Pedro's life regularly identify Pedro with the dual surname, the new dual surname standard, including this death record. Encountering this record and understanding this still newish dual surname system in place by this time, we can make some important inferences. We can infer that Pedro's father, and possibly his patrilineal line further back, carried the surname Nieto as well. We're used to making this kind of inference when doing most of our genealogical research on U.S. families. But seeing the second surname of Castillo allows us to infer that Pedro's mother carried the paternal surname of Castillo. Even if we do not know her given name yet, we know to now look for a female with the paternal surname of Castillo. So, even if we don't know his mother's name, we know we should be looking for his mother to have a father that carries the Castillo surname, and possibly further back through that patrilineal line. We do, however, and fortunately, learn the name of Pedro's parents from this same record. This is the bottom section of Pedro's 1891 Mexican civil death registration. There's several family names here that we'll walk through. In the yellow rectangular frame up top, we see the name of Pedro's surviving widow, Maria Juana Infante. She's wife number 2. I descend from his first wife, who had died earlier, before Pedro would have been allowed to remarry again. Maria Juana is recorded with just a single surname, Infante, so we can infer that this is her paternal surname. Underlined in blue, Pedro's father is identified as Nepomuceno Nieto, again with just a single surname, which we can infer is his paternal surname. Underlined in pink, Pedro's mother is identified as Concepcion Castillo, but again with just a single surname, which we can infer is her paternal surname. So what's our big takeaway? Our big takeaway from this record is that even though the formal dual surname standard was in place by this time, 1891, we sometimes see the dual surname in records, yet we oftentimes only see a single surname, and that's usually the paternal surname. We do tend to find dual surnames most often in Mexican civil registrations because civil registrations became the legal vital record in Mexico. And the dual surname was the legal name of record introduced alongside of civil registration. So we find it most often in Mexican civil registrations and in the 1930 Mexican federal census. We do not see the dual surnames appear as often in Catholic parish registers at this time. So just be prepared. Sometimes you see the dual surname, sometimes you don't. To learn more about surname customs in the Spanish-speaking world, you want to consult the works of the late Dr. George Reiskamp, the padrino of Spanish and Hispanic genealogy. I cannot recommend enough both of the books shown here. The Hispanic Roots book, as well as the 2012 journal article I show here that was published in the Journal of Family History, both of those works take deep dives into the surname customs going back to pre-medieval Spain, carried over to the New World, and moving forward to the present day. And we lost Dr. George Reiskamp recently in July of 2022. I want to personally thank Dr. George Reiskamp and his wonderful wife, Peggy, for their decades of work and passion in helping all of us learn how to research our Hispanic ancestors. Thank you for your time and attention today. If you have comments or questions, you are welcome to post those here on this YouTube page, or you can visit my blog at www.colleengreen.com. That's green with an E at the end, and you can post them there on the blog.